Hey, how's it going?
Hey.
Hey, Graham.
Hey, how's it going?
Good.
Nice. So, Henry will be with us in a sec.
No worries.
Have you got plans for the long weekend, Graham?
No, and I just realized tomorrow I've got it's Family and Friends Day, isn't it?
That's right.
Wow, yeah, I just totally forgot.
Oh, wait a minute, really?
Yeah.
Did you forget as well, John?
Yeah, I didn't do that. I think I registered it a while ago, but I totally forgot. Sorry, Graham, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I just had the same kind of stunned realization. Yes, I don't know. I probably not much by the sound of it. I was going to do the Gprod upgrade for US West D, but I guess I might shift that to one day.
Let's do it. I'll be working probably. I guess I don't have
You
any
too.
other plans. No, I'll be playing video games probably.
Yeah, sounds like what I'd be doing, honestly.
Oh, there you go. Henry, did you know it's Family and Friends Day tomorrow?
I know, and I
There we go.
reserved the day for myself a long time ago already. Also for March. There will be another one, right?
I think that once a
assume
month.
so.
Looking forward to it.
Yeah. Yeah. So nice. Okay, so welcome everyone. Scarbeck has left challenge number 1. So see who would like to pick this up. So last night he got traffic going through to Kubernetes on staging for the API service. So he suggested we could demo things. He specifically suggested I could demo them things to you, but maybe like Henry, I don't know if you want to like have a shot at that and we can dive in if you get stuck, or if that's too much for your first APAC demo.
It's a question of what to demo here. I mean, I could just have a look at the dashboard, maybe how it's looking like.
Sounds good.
I would even just be happy if you could, share your screen, show the pods running, and just show the HA proxy config sending traffic to it. That's pretty much would be good enough for me.
Yeah.
Dashboard also is fine.
I just started to open the dashboard. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Can you see my screen?
Yeah, we can see it.
So looking at the API, just zoomed out to 24 hours view. It seems to be working, which is nice on GStage. And no, that's Gprod. Have a look at GStage. It's graded. It's a little bit slow to load because it's over 24 hours. So it looks like apparently we started yesterday to shift traffic over to the API pods, I guess, at 20. Then we have a higher error rate, 40%. That's not really that great. Let's have a look at the cube detail. I'm totally unprepared, so I just need to have a look here. Yeah, so that's right. So we got the deployment started. All 3 stones seems to get traffic, which is nice.
Sorry to clarify.
But,
so there's no
this?
API. Sorry, is there no API VM serving traffic? It's just now pods.
Let me check the rates, I guess, for HA proxy. Was it get server state, right? So I shared my console. Am I right? That should give me the weights for the HA proxy for G staging right now. It's very slow at getting this. Yeah, so we got it set to 100 here, and the rest of the nodes is set to 0, so everything is going to Kubernetes. Yeah. Okay.
So is the error rate high at the moment just because we've got such a low amount of traffic?
That could be true, but I mean, we saw it consistently over all the time. So I wonder if we would have, in between somebody generating some traffic. And I mean, it changed since we changed the deployment. So I would more guess that really something is going wrong there. I mean, it's consistently high and above 20% since we started the deployment, routing to the Kubernetes deployment. Let's have a look at Kibana maybe. I think my internet is very slow today. I don't know why, but it's taking ages to load anything. Oh, that's not nice. If you selected G staging, you'll still go to the production Kibana, so that will not work. Over to the non-prod log Elastic cluster now. Wow, that really takes long.
Okay, maybe we should move along. I think the kind of view on staging is we know we have a few blockers as well. We're talking with distribution about to prioritize those around improving, reducing the logs we get, dropping out some of the duplication, as well as looking at what we can do for the giving some more control over the blackout options for the API service. So those things are all kind of coming. So we're probably unlikely to move beyond staging before we have at least some of those things, particularly on the logging. So we'll probably sit here for a little bit anyway. So yeah, you can see on the logs, like you just get so much blankness that you have to kind of filter right down before you can actually even start finding out what's interesting. So we want to clean that up before we go to Canary. Otherwise that'll be a pain.
Just something else to be aware of for everyone interested with API and web as well. There was an incident in the last week relating to disk usage on API nodes with like files getting buffered onto disk. I've opened an issue in the delivery queue basically to say it looks from what I can determine, we are going to have this problem or these files in the API pods when we migrate. So I need to reword the issue a little bit, but at the very least, I've looked at where those files are going to go, and we probably need to set a maximum size so we don't basically at the moment, it's quite possible for someone to kind of, I think, upload enough that it will fill up the disk of the Kubernetes node and cause a whole node to be recycled and everything get evicted out. So there's a deeper question there on the application side of like, why are these files buffered? Is there a limit? How do we clean that up and what have you? But in the meantime, we should just use some Kubernetes. Just basically, it needs some changes in the Helm chart to basically say, okay, every pod can only use this amount of disk space, and make sure that however many pods we have on a node, you know, they're not going to basically saturate the node. It's just a little gotcha.
It's using the shared dir for buffering, right? And that's an empty. I think we already have that configured as an empty dir on Sidekick, and I don't know whether that is also configured on web service, but maybe we just do the same thing on web service, set it as an empty dir, and then set a size limit.
Yeah, so we already do the empty dir, we're just missing the size limit. So I'm happy I'm happy to do the change. It's like a one-line change or whatever in the chart. But yeah, we should actually just do some preemptive kind of configuring of that. I don't think it's a big deal for Sidekick, but it seems to be a really big deal for API nodes. Turns out that we get like 4 gigabyte DVD ISOs getting uploaded there and stuff from people trying to do dodgy stuff. So
yeah, but we don't have any size limit on the API VM machines, and I don't think it's been an issue there. So I think the only case where we run into problems maybe is that if you have a large file upload and then there's some failure, then the file sticks around, because these should only be temporary files.
Sure. Well,
but our disk isn't, you're saying, I guess you're saying our disk may not be as large on the nodes as it is on the, and you have possibly fewer nodes servicing requests. I see.
And I think, while it may not have been an issue in the past, it's certainly, it's not causing like SLO alerts, but it's certainly causing some alerts now. So I don't know, maybe this is just purely an application bug. Maybe it's like, yeah, we found a use case where these aren't getting cleaned up, but.
So this is related to some alerts we've been seeing recently with regard to disk utilization.
Let me see if let me, they're mostly disk space alerts, but I believe there was something deeper. So here's
I remember.
Sorry.
I was going to say that I know that we've had issues previously with Nginx cache files where it was Nginx buffering that was causing the problem with large uploads, and that those buffers not being cleaned up properly. It might be a problem. This might be a new problem we see with the Nginx Ingress controller if we have.
So I don't think this is from Nginx. So this seems to, I'm trying to find the right one.
I popped the link in the agenda.
Look, you know, I'll be perfectly honest. I haven't looked at it in depth, but I'm just raising it as with this migration for API nodes. It sounds like there's something going on. Maybe it's just an application bug and that's all this is, but we just need to be aware of it. That's all.
Yeah, sounds sensible. Cool. I
wanted to add this to the readiness review anyway, for checking that we have always enough space.
Cool. Okay, great. Sounds good. Thanks for showing us that stuff, Henry. Shall we? Should we move on to discussion items?
By talking about showing the stuff, I want to just shortly say that it looks like it's related to pages and not finding some credentials. So I guess we need to look into that later. So it's mostly about internal pages, API endpoint, and I see a lot of those messages coming up here related to missing credentials or something. So
okay, nice.
That seems to be a problem since the deployment.
Great, thanks for that. Cool, so Graham, how are you getting on with the GKE upgrades?
They're going swimmingly. They're absolutely perfect without issue. Every one I've done has actually been great. They're just slow, which you know, I discuss a bit further down, but yeah, they're just slow. I do think I haven't enabled auto upgrades in production yet, but I think we're confident enough now. It's been running in the other environments long enough that I will. And yeah, that will alleviate a lot of the pressure, I guess, because the upgrades will just be happening in the background. But they've really been fine. They're just slow. And I guess I could even change to just like bursting up double the node. Like basically there's different strategies I could do, but I'm doing the slowest strategy, so I can't really complain. But yeah, no, they've been fantastic. Hopefully wrapped up early next week. But like the main gprod one is going to take me a few days at the rate I'm kind of going. So it's like, yeah, but I might try and just like burst up new node pools, like just brand new node pools, and see if we can just shift the workloads over through natural deploys or something different.
I see. So there's two types of upgrades. There's a Kubernetes upgrade and the node upgrades, right?
Yeah, so
like these are
split them into the master upgrades and the node pool upgrades. The master upgrades are fine. They're like 5-10 minutes, rock solid, not even a blip. And it's just the node pool upgrades. And the node pool upgrades, so it's perfectly valid and supported to have like Kubernetes node pools of a minor version behind. So you can have 117 node pools. So there's nothing that's pressing for me to like, oh, I need to upgrade all these node pools straight away now that I've upgraded the masters kind of thing. The reason I do it simply is more for procedural, because I have to do a change issue, and the change issue gives me like feels process wise like a bounded thing. I can't just be like, oh, this change will happen sometime in the future. I kind of got to box it. So I kind of put it all together as one change request and just power through it all. But I don't know, maybe that's, but it would be great to do something like either I spin up new node pools, or I can just set them to auto up. Like if they're just set to auto upgrade and we just leave it, they'll do a couple of nodes over the coming weeks. And actually our auto scaling will probably just make the problem, like they'll just, when they scale up, they'll scale.
Yeah, I think we should just do that personally.
Yeah.
Like the work of spinning up a new node pool and migrating workload. I mean, this is like a full day, a half a day, maybe a full day of effort just to go through all the change issue documentation. And I think it's more risky to do that than just to let it go happen automatically, especially if we do it on the zonal clusters first and we're happy. Have you done the node upgrades on the zonal clusters already?
Yeah, so production zonal clusters, we've got a majority of zonal workloads running on 118 now. We've only got one zonal cluster left, which I was going to do tomorrow, and I might still do tomorrow in the morning.
Why don't we just do auto upgrade on the remaining zonal cluster just to make sure that it works like we expect it, sure. and then we can do that on the regional, and then we're done.
Yeah, sounds good.
Okay.
Semi-related, I won't go into it now. If you check out the infrastructure like README, the interesting links channel, it seems Google have just done a big announcement about even more Google managed Kubernetes, where they do all the upgrades and everything for you, it looks like. So I don't think it's something we need to look at right now, but it's something interesting we could consider in the future as well. And it seems like they're really, really pushing customers towards just let us do everything, you just use, So it's another, it's an evolution of the auto upgrade thing, basically, where they actually take more control over the node pools and stuff as well. So
cool. What should be on our radar for features in 118 that we didn't have in 117?
So two things, there's a fix coming in for this mailroom, I think, and possibly a lot of other pods where the TCP settings were not set to Google Cloud's match, like not the TCP timeout settings, I think, or we're not matching Google Cloud's underlying settings. So I don't know how that manifests itself exactly. We did see it, I think, manifest itself with long-lived connections and mailroom, but it may have other unknown side effects that would be fixed, or at least might make things better with 118. The other big thing is the Ingress spec has finally been finalized. So all our ingresses are going to change because they've changed the way they've moved some settings from annotations into real settings, and they've changed. Basically, they've made incompatible changes. 118 will still happily accept the old spec. It's 122, so like 4 versions from now, where they'll stop accepting it. But considering how many ingresses we have and how many charts we have, I'd like us to try and get ahead of that before we get caught. And the other thing is there was an issue you had, Jav, that was now unblocked related to pod auto scaling that needed 118.
Yeah, this is it's related to the HPA, right?
Yeah, yes.
Yeah.
I can't remember why. All I remember is there was talk it was this needed to be Cube 118 for some.
Yeah, this feature, which I was really looking forward to, allows you to prevent the dithering we see on scaling, where when we scale up, let's wait a little bit before we scale down.
Gotcha.
And this is something we should add. We should probably get issues in for all this stuff for the Nginx ingress, or all ingresses, I guess. Like, is this something we should do now before because right now we don't depend on at least the Nginx ingress anywhere until as soon as we do the API, right? Then I don't know. I don't know how much work it's going to be.
Yeah, hopefully it's not. I haven't looked closely into the differences and how they expect you to like migrate the settings and what have you. There's all, yeah, we do need to look into it. Short answer is we should look into it and figure out, and probably have to do a quick audit of what ingresses we're using. Because it's not just the GitLab chart, it'll be everything in GitLab Helm files. Like, we use it for all the monitoring stack and things like that. There's probably a few in there. I don't know if we use one for plant UML.
We do.
Yeah.
Okay, well, this will be fun.
We've got a year, or we've got about a year that we have to worry about it, but I just don't want to, it's very easy to forget. And then in a year's time, get caught out.
Okay. I think I have an issue open for the HBA setting. I don't know where it is. I think it's in the delivery tracker, but could you open up issues for the things that you know about, just so we keep them on our radar?
1.19, which I don't think we need to look at now for a few months, has also got quite a few big changes as well that will be of interest to us. I can't remember what they were, but I remember there were some there.
Okay, cool. Anything else, Amy?
A quick question, Graham. Yeah, I just wanted to ask Graham, where are you looking for information about Kubernetes news? Do you have some good trackers where you get all the information?
Yeah, so really I just look at the Kubernetes project release notes. That's usually my best go-to.
Okay.
I am in the Kubernetes Slack, as well as like kubernetes.slack.com. A few different channels in there. But yeah, by far the best. They do really good release notes. That's the short kind of, so reading their release notes as soon as things are released, because they're a lot quicker than, like, as the versions get released, there's still a few months before GKE sees them, like Google gets them and like certifies them and patches them. So we can get a full picture of what's coming even before it's ready for us in GKE. But they're trying to actually close that window. Obviously, Google wants to be able to deliver it quicker. But yeah, the upstream release notes, perfect.
I highly recommend also the Google Kubernetes podcast, which is once a week, and it doesn't cover all stuff that's coming, but it does usually highlight at least like new features.
Yeah,
and also has some GKE specific things as well that they talk about.
I know that you're listening to a lot of podcasts, Shaf. I try to do the same. My problem is I always fall asleep after 5 minutes listening, because I do this in the evening. It doesn't matter what I'm listening to. I need to do this daytime, I guess.
My thing is just listening to them while I clean the bathroom or clean the house, like.
Yeah. Okay, thanks.
All
right. Graham, you got the next one.
Yeah, sure. So there's a few of these which are just more, questions, taking this opportunity that we have to chat in person, that I was just trying to feel out some information and bits and pieces from. Jav, you've already put a lot of information down there, so I won't waste too much of everyone's time. But yeah, I was just interested in where we do Ssl termination for pages, considering the fact that we do have custom domains and all that. It's interesting to note we actually terminated in the application. Makes sense. Yeah, I've been looking at ingresses recently, especially off the back of the work for Cass. So ingresses, Cloudflare, how it all fits together for our stack. And You know, it'd be great to push that further out the stack, but obviously with pages, I don't think that's possible. So it sounds like we're always going to have a layer 4 load balancer right up to the pages application. Yeah. And also, yeah, customers, A records, everything else. Yeah. That's a shame.
Yeah.
But, you know, is what
I
it
think
is.
I mean, the majority of pages traffic is probably GitLab.io, and we could move that in front of Cloudflare. I don't think there's anything preventing us from doing that now. Like we would just change yeah, we could just change the endpoint to use Cloudflare. There's probably an issue out there for it.
Yeah,
but you're thinking ahead of when we move pages to Kubernetes, how that topology
just
will look
how does
like,
that work? Yeah.
and
like,
and whether we can get rid of HA proxy ideally.
Yeah, or just what is the front door in general, right? Like, I mean, not necessarily getting rid of HA proxy, but is it just everything's got to be layer 4 all the way up to the pod, which it sounds like it kind of does, for at least for the domains we don't know.
Yeah, I mean, there is the possibility of getting rid of HA proxy, but we would have to move the reserved IP from the TCP load balancer that sits in front of HA proxy to the TCP load balancer that sits in front of Nginx or whatever. Yeah, the Nginx Ingress. To be honest, I don't know if that would be a smooth transition. We might have to like schedule a little bit of downtime if we did something like that.
Fair enough. Yeah, so the other point there, and you've already put a lot of information in Java. So once again, it was just going back off the upgrade and just thinking further, like if we're going to have 100 web service pods, 200, they take a very long time to cycle one at a time. So all I'm just throwing out there as a suggestion or idea, if there's any way we can try and shorten our turnover times on the web service pods, I'm not even sure if it's possible, but if there is any way we can, it would be really good to try and do that now. Failing that, I think we need to look at ways of like pod disruption budgets, over provision, something to kind of spin up the cycle of turning over those pods. Because correct me if I'm wrong, if we're going to try and do a Helm upgrade, it's going to wait. A Helm upgrade will wait for every single pod to be cycled, I think at least by default. And that's going to be a long time, probably longer. That we're going to have to keep extending our Helm timeouts the more pods we have, which seems a bit, it seems like it's going to be potentially an issue that might come. But yeah.
Yeah, I'm not super happy with this. And it's like, if there is a image pool failure or something, you have to wait like, an hour. It's just too long. It sucks.
I've talked in the past, probably in other related issues, about like breaking up the Helm process from like the apply to the watching to the rollback into different steps. I'm not, that's got its own challenges, but yeah, we just may have to be careful when we bring on API and web, what that means for the current CI pipeline and how long it's going to take.
Isn't the issue that we just can't make Puma spin up faster? So I guess
even
the
shut
only
down
way
faster, I think. Puma spinning up takes a while, and that's understandable. But even the shutdown is quite long, which sounds like
the only way I could think about to speed this up maybe would be, instead of rolling 3 pods at the same time or something, to spin up a lot of new pods at once and then bring down a lot of pods that were left in the old state, right? Because I don't see how else we could speed this up, right?
Yeah, so you're right. My only question with that is I'm not sure if it's like for every time we cycle a pod, we get a tiny amount of errors. And at the moment, we keep it under our error budget. But if we start shutting down and spinning up more pods at a time, especially when we shut down more pods at a time, is that tiny amount of errors we cause going to start becoming a big amount of errors and causing app decks? Because if during a clean pod shutdown of the web service pod, we know there's like 0 errors happen, like we do it correctly and everything, then it's probably not an issue. But I'm not sure if that's the case. It could be. I just need to have a look at it. But yeah, that's my concern about changing the bursting to be higher, is that we're actually causing a small error rate at the moment, and it's bursting more will just cause us to make a bigger error rate.
And is this related to the blocker issue we have OpenJav, like the blackout, having more control over the blackout timings?
We need to have more control over that for API, but and that will speed up. I think we'll see a lot quicker like pod cycles on API than we do currently on Git HTTPS.
Oh, okay. Cool.
Because if we are able to set the blackout seconds.
Ah, gotcha. Right. So we will be able to tune that down, right?
Well, actually, let's see. Yeah, the problem is the termination timeout is currently set longer than the blackout window. So, and the reason for that is because Puma is taking a very long time just to shut down cleanly because of the long blackout seconds window. If we have to keep that long, then our options are either we wait for that blackout seconds window to expire, or we give it a sig kill. Like we tell Kubernetes just to don't wait, kill it. But that's not very clean. So I think we'll probably have to live with these long shutdown cycles for now but I assume this is going to be changed soon.
Okay, cool. Yeah, look, if it gets changed, that's fine. I was just worried because I know how long it takes now, and I just thought more pods, longer.
Yeah.
Does it also mean if we have more pods and it's longer, like there's a risk, right? At some point we just run out of pods. Is that right? Like if we can't cycle them fast enough?
I think Helm will time out, or else the ob job would time out, and just that would be not great, because obviously if things like auto deploy, if the job times out, the job fails, it holds up auto deploy and everything. Yeah, it's hard to test because staging's just got nowhere near the amount of pod. Maybe we need to do a test of spinning this up 100 pods in staging, or however much we think we need, and then see if it's going to even be an issue. Maybe it's not an issue.
Yeah. Cool. So number 5.
Yeah, my next point, once again, pretty of a big section. Don't need to go into too much detail. There's a lot of good stuff already been put in there. But I've just, off the back of looking at the Ingress stuff for CAS, I started looking around just in general, did some bits pieces relating to our front door. And I had some thoughts about how we could, if we wanted to, use, there's a very, very good, a very healthy and quite strong Ingress HA proxy project, and basically using that to replace our HA proxy layer that we currently have in VMs, if we feel there's still benefit to keep it. And I actually kind of do think there might be benefit to keeping it at least a little bit. But yeah, I put what I feel are some pros to doing that, just by converting our HA proxy layer into Kubernetes pods, how I could split that out with different controllers for pages, API, CAS, and the main one, how I think that could all work and what could be some of the benefits of that, better dynamic canarying. Every single pod can become a backend in HA proxy, can do some pretty cool stuff with that and traffic routing. But, this is all conditional on if we think this is something worthwhile tackling now, worthwhile tackling later. I'm pretty flex, but I do think there's some interesting ideas there, which I could turn into something like a demo or something. But it's obviously incredibly risky to actually do that, because that's our front door, and if something goes wrong, we're in a lot of trouble.
Is there any is there something which it would be good to have this done before we tackle? Is it something that stateful services, or is it just it would be good to have as a sort of general setup?
I think right now it's good that we can easily dial between stateless services and Kubernetes and the VMs we still have, right, for testing, forth and back with API and web. So it's good to have the old method of simply doing that. I guess after we move the majority of things into Kubernetes, then it would be great to also look into the Ingress, I think, right? I mean, and I don't know how easy it would be to handle the same thing when we moved it over to HA proxy ingress. Probably also there are ways to make it easy, but
so it actually looks like it's pretty good. They've got some pretty good options for like basically injecting your own configuration into it. You can also do things like we can add what is essentially a Kubernetes backend, but it's actually like a VM network endpoint group in Google, which allows us to basically still send traffic to virtual machines and things like that. So you can do some pretty good stuff. And this is what I was kind of thinking with this is I think I could pull together something that would work quite well. But at the same time, I'm very aware this is probably not the highest priority. So I might even just put some notes on the issues that Scarbeck's linked there, just to say, this would be a project interested in, this is how I think it would work. And then, whenever we choose to tackle that issue, it's there. But yeah, I think definitely web and API and things like that are way higher priority. But, at the same time, I personally, I'm open to, I think HA proxy would be maybe easier, maybe more important than doing our stateful services to Kubernetes. I'm not sure if, what's involved with that, but things like Gitly and stuff in Kubernetes, I feel like the pros and cons, I don't know.
I think it's interesting to think about how we would replace HA proxy, because in the Kubernetes world, once we have the migration fully complete, the three things we needed it for are cookie routing, which maybe we could do with Cloudflare, I don't know. But that's one thing. Second thing is doing weighting for weighted traffic between the clusters. And the third thing is similar, which is just draining an entire cluster. So if we think there's value in those items, Canary, I don't know, we've already shifted a bit with Canary. We used to do this we still do this request path routing, but lately we've been starting just to take a percentage of traffic. And if we do that, then maybe HA proxy is not helping a whole lot. I don't know. And for draining and shifting the weight of traffic, what would be the
how would you do that?
How would you do that without having HA proxy VMs? You would have to have HA proxy running in a cluster in front of your other clusters. How would that work?
So how it kind of actually works is, so how they kind of get you to do it is there's basically a bunch of annotations and different config maps you can do to basically say this service backend weighted this way. And you can do things like you can weight it just traditionally as in 10%, 20% or whatever. You can weight it by number of pods. So because the controller itself runs in Kubernetes, it can do more intelligent things. Like essentially all it's doing is its controller that will generate some HA proxy configuration automatically and apply it, or it talks to a HA proxy instance over a socket. Doesn't even actually run in Kubernetes. I think if you set it up right, it could talk to a remote HA proxy, but I think that's a bit too kind of out there.
But we need to be able to route outside of the cluster.
Yeah, so you can.
Right?
Yeah. So you would put what is essentially a GKE specific object, which is this is a backend that's a network endpoint group, and my API nodes are in that network endpoint group, and suddenly it can route to. So basically, network endpoint groups are Google's big. They're their kind of technology piece for doing routing to VMs and Kubernetes, and they've made it a first-class Kubernetes object, so you can do a YAML just the same way we do some of the custom Google stuff like Google Managed Certs, Google Backend configs. You can drop something into the Kubernetes land that basically says, I've set up a network endpoint group with my VMs behind it, and then you can put some additional settings on top of it, what port and what health checks and all that, or whatever it adds. And that means HA proxy, because it's a Kubernetes native object, can pick that up and then just be like, okay, this is the IPs of the backends I need to do. But that being said, sorry, I was going to say, if we would probably do this after, if we had to keep VMs around forever, maybe it's not as good as an idea. I do actually think that I definitely don't have all the answers right now, but from an initial glance, I feel like there's a possibility of a solution to basically be equivalent to what we do now.
Okay.
But stats from very, 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 not briefly looking at it. I kind of play with it a little bit. But the way you would do it would be slightly different. And it's definitely more towards how Google kind of wants you to do it. They want you to like set up these network. They've got some really cool kind of custom resource definitions around doing this kind of stuff. So it'd be leveraging more of that stuff, which we haven't done much of yet.
Yeah.
Maybe, as I said, maybe not important now, maybe in the future, but yeah.
Okay.
Maybe deciding that should look to which kind of thing we want to be. We also consider to look into Istio, I guess, and other things. So maybe we should think about that first, and then look into if we want to spend effort going with HAProxy or Istio or something else for traffic routing.
Yeah, so I definitely noted that's obviously a downside is we haven't had the discussion in general about, service mesh or just Ingress proxies and because there's lots out there. I just kind of was looking at the HAProxy one because it's a known quantity to us. It would be easier to directly replace HAProxy with another HAProxy. We could, we knew the configuration settings we need to make sure and things like that. But certainly you're right. I think, the larger issue would be if we want to remove HAProxy, is another HAProxy the right answer? Is one of the other 20, 30 like Ingress controllers out there the better way to do it? And to keep this meeting trying to be on time, the only other thing I was going to point out is, I've seen more and more, we've had to do some, I've noticed with the API migration, Henry and Scarback have been doing more and more trying to bend the current Helm file template situation to their will. So I'll have some time like in the next week or so. I'm happy to try and continue to kickstart at least some of the work involved into what I would believe would be a process of moving the Helm file generation into JSON, and then basically using Helm file to just run Helm, doing what it does best, running Helm, and doing that stuff. But actually all of the logic around what values go into Helm, basically moving out into JSON. So, I've got a branch up there, which I've tackled one file, but, it could make it easier to do some of this stuff.
Yeah, I'm on the fence there. I don't know. Like, it sounds like it would be better. I would like to move GitLab CI to JSON personally, because this is where it's like really there's a lot of copy and paste, and it's kind of like seems like it'd be a pretty easy thing for us to do. I don't know what are the problems you see with the GitLab?
I think doing conditional logic is, it's tricky. There's nothing we can't do, but conditional logic is hard. Being able to do functions and a bit more in-depth string translation and stuff, I think is a win. The value validation is a lot stronger. So like, just being able to, not necessarily even with moving to JSON per se. So there's a few different things I've kind of bundled together. There's converting that to JSON, but also changing the process from evaluating an execute time to basically moving it to an external tool that you can like our rules files, you just run make generate, it spits out the YAML. You can look at the YAML and the YAML gets committed. So it's decoupling us from like executing Chef every time, talking to Chef every time. It's also making it easy to debug, because rather than having to run Helm file debug and see the piles of output through that, you can just see the files on disk, and it makes it a lot easier, especially if people aren't familiar with the repo, to just go and say, I'm just going to look at the YAML file for gprod CNY and see what that value is. So it's kind of like you have one JSON document that's the giant truth of everything, and that spits out the real YAML files. And then all Helm file does is just reads the one YAML file off disk and then run Helm with that. And then it's kind of, Helm file becomes a lot more simpler, and it's about because it's not evaluating things over and over. It makes Sure.
I was just going to say, I think that the hardest part for me is reading about the inheritance chain of YAML files in Helm file. And this, I just recently added the zonal. We can now add a file for each zonal cluster, and then I had to include the file only if it exists, and
Yeah,
that you
so-
can't do with them file. So with JSON, it would just be like,
if
you would just have like one YAML per environment, right?
yeah.
So that does make it a little simpler.
And
I
like
don't
you
know.
can do whole conditional blocks, you know, we would just be like, oh, if the environment has this setting, you know, just include this whole block, otherwise nothing. And it's very simple, obviously, with JSON to do. So
I can just say, not being an expert in all of this, but trying to read and understand our configuration there right now, I noticed that it's not easy for a newbie to follow where things are landing in and where they are coming from. I mean, I get it after a while looking into it. I think when I get used to it, I also will be faster with that. But I think to have it simpler to reason about a certain deployment by seeing all of that in one file explicitly would help me a lot, just for readability.
But yeah, even if we don't move to JSON, you know, I could look at seeing if we can like extrapolate the logic out that we have, so we are just generating one values file or something like that. Because it is, yeah.
I think it's an interesting idea. I think getting rid of, I think the biggest pain point for me is like all the shelling out we do, and also like we need to start thinking of what we're going to do when we don't need the chef JSON files anymore. I guess in some ways this becomes simpler, right? We'll just move configuration out of the chef JSONs into the values YAML.
Yeah,
and
I mean,
right.
Yeah, so I guess once API and web is moved, I would almost argue that the Kubernetes repo becomes the source of truth. Like, what is the source of truth for configuration? It becomes the Kubernetes repo.
Yeah, because it means that we aren't running Rails at all on virtual machines, except for the lingering sidekick catch-all fleet, but that should migrate soon. As soon as Pages transitions fully to object storage, I think then we are good to go there. We'll move Sidekick. So Sidekick might be the last thing to move. As soon as Rails is completely off of virtual machines, then Kubernetes becomes a source of truth for config.
Yeah. So so yeah, the work I've done so far, I've actually covered some of it. Yeah, I think because once again I've basically moved the execution, pulling stuff out of JSON because JSON can't do it like Helm template does. You can't shell out in JSON.
Yeah, I know.
Which I think is I think it's nice as well because yeah, I'm just having even the IP addresses for the load balancers. I run one gcloud command. I get all that you tell gcloud to output it in JSON, and then I can just manipulate that. I've got a function in JSON where I just go, get me the IP for this service, get me the IP for this service. I just walks the tree, walks the JSON object, grabs it, grabs anything I need, and then I can just pop that, you know, basically wherever I want. But yeah, look, as I said, I put it out there. If we feel it's got working on, I'm happy to work on it. If we don't, that's also fine.
Great. And the last, or not the last issue, but the next one, I just wanted to highlight again the net capacity issue. And this is something we really need to be aware of as we create more nodes for the API deployment. We're already sort of at the limit here. I'm not sure how much it's affecting us, but I'll bring it up in the next, I think this is a core infra issue. So I have a meeting with the managers today, so I'll bring it to their attention to see what we should do or who can own it. And Amy, you have the last one.
Yeah, so I just wanted to see, Graham, your thoughts on, I know we had some ideas on CAS on things that we, like additional things we wanted to do. Are there things that we need to do before it goes live to all users?
Yeah, so it's a good question. So basically my looking at everything now holistically now is, I've got an MR up to get the network policy in place. And but beyond that, I actually can't see anything where I'm like, oh my God, this is critical. We need to kind of get done before it goes to a writer group. I think they've done a really good amount of testing now that the safety mechanisms in CAS are in place. We have got it behind Cloudflare, admit rudimentary. So we've got, you know, all the coverage there. I feel like for the problems we can see, you know, we're pretty well prepared. Obviously, there's problems we can't see or may not see, but I think it's looking pretty good for a general rollout. You know, it's got its own ingress, it's got its own path into our, it doesn't go through any of our existing infrastructure. It'd be really hard for it to cause, even if it was to, you know, be abused or attacked or something, it's, you know, I isolated it and did all the work completely to try and make sure that there was no way it could affect the rest of the infrastructure.
Nice, that's great. Do you have an idea, do you know when it's likely to go live to all users?
No, they're basically happy to defer to my judgment. Not in terms of like I guess it's a partnership more or less, right? So they're looking at it. So they've started getting people use, you know, what bugs do they find? Is this ready from a usability perspective? And then also at the same time, they're really, you know, receptive to working with me on how, or the greater infrastructure group on how do we feel is it ready? You know, is there things that are outstanding? I don't know what you've been hearing, but what I'm seeing at the moment is, you know, we're barely getting one request a second. There's hardly anyone using it. So I think there's not going to be that much interest in it. So they've just started on feature flagging people on. So it's going to take, I think, a week, or, you know, we're not going to see traffic, like a good amount of traffic for a while. And that might give us more information. So I would expect they're not ready. They're not like chomping at the bit to roll it out to everyone straight away. But yeah, when they do, you know, they're happy to get our collective feedback on if we think it's ready. And I'm pretty okay with it.
Nice.
Do we have a dedicated node pool for this guy or not?
We do, and it's running on that. Yep.
Seems like a little bit of a waste of money, but maybe it's the best thing.
It is a waste of money, and I'm actually happy to get rid of it. But once again, it was just more, you know.
We could ask to see the future. Like if they don't anticipate this scaling up, we could just move it to default.
Yeah.
Because we don't need more than a single pod, and there's just no traffic there.
Yeah, I mean, going off the predictions, we could definitely see. I wouldn't expect more than 10 pods within the next year, but it definitely could pick up as usage picks up. But even 10 pods, like, I don't know whether it's worth having a node pool for that. It is definitely over provisioned with what it's on at the moment. There's no doubt about that.
Okay.
Fantastic. Is there anything else anyone wanted to cover today? No? Fantastic. Well, thanks everyone. That was like super great discussion, and thanks for the demo, Henry. Yeah, enjoy the rest of your day and long weekends.
Thank you.
Right.
One last thing I'll mention before I go. Okay, if there's not a discussion now, I'm happy to move these meetings back an hour if that works better for everyone in Europe. I don't know how early people get up. So all I'm just saying is if you want to move it back an hour, although probably an hour later for Craig Miskell, I don't know how good that works for him. But if you want to in the future, fine by me.
Cool. Okay, we could definitely review. Like I think for me, certainly this time's fine, but we can work around it. It'll get interesting. I think the clocks change, right? Like when do clocks change? End of March? Then we can review it. That's where the time starts shifting around, right? So
for me, it's fine. We started actually to get up earlier now.
Cool. Okay, well, we can certainly like review this going forwards, but appreciate all your inputs today. Have a good rest of your day.
Yep. Thanks, everyone.
Right.
Bye-bye.
Take care.